I'm going to give you basically the same presentation that I gave to City Council. And I think it will be important for you to know and to understand how this budget works in its entirety. This is a big budget. This is gross over $1.2 billion, net over $800 million, and it's very intertwined. If you pull one thread out of it, like with a piece of clothing, if you pluck one thread out, it causes an effect elsewhere in the budget. So I wanted to do this because I want you to understand how all of this works, how it all fits together, the different pots of money, what's available to be spent, what projects we have in mind, and then we can take some questions. So, Carla, go ahead and flip to the next one. Go ahead. Some of the good things that have happened this year. I mean, look at that list of recognitions of your city. One of the 8th best cities for millennials, young people. Top 10 for job growth, 7th best city for veterans to find jobs. One of the most affordable cities in the country. One of the best American cities to do business in. 4th most affordable city for young professionals. And I can tell you that we have created more jobs in the Tampa Bay area than any place else in the state of Florida in the last year. It's been a good year for us. It's been a good year for us, and we are coming out of the wreckage of this recession, a recession that devastated this city like it did a lot of cities. It devastated the state of Florida, probably to a greater degree than almost any place in America, but we are starting to come out of this. You remember when I was here the first time, I was facing a $34 million deficit on day one. On day one. That wasn't Mayor Iorio's fault. I'm glad I followed Mayor Iorio because she left the reserves in a healthy position that allowed us as a team and as a city to get through that deficit that year. The next year it was down in the low 20s, and it's gone increasingly down ever since. And the end result of this year's budget, which I will get to at the end of this, is that as opposed to tapping the reserves to make sure that we submit a balanced budget, because unlike our friends in Washington, D.C. or in Tallahassee, city government has to submit a balanced budget. We don't kick the can down the road. So this year's budget, in addition to doing all the things that you're going to hear about tonight, we were able to put $1.3 million back into the reserves. So we're not having to tap the reserves this year, which makes the Wall Street rating agencies very happy. Go ahead, Carla. Bollywood, that really is not me dancing up there. That's somebody impersonating someone dancing up there. That was not a pretty day for me, I will tell you, in no uncertain terms. I haven't danced since my wedding day, and don't plan on dancing until my next wedding day. But don't, no, that's a joke. I'm happily married, I love my wife. I'm not, as all of you know, I waited till I was 40 to get married, right, Diane? So I'm not going anywhere. I love my wife. All the reporters are like, what did he just say? Okay, next slide. We'll go from here. What this slide shows is how the economy is improving. This is an indication of building permits and building starts. And why is this important? This is important because we need people to be building. We need people to be growing, we need people to be hiring, because that's the only way local government can get additional revenues. We are dependent on property taxes. So the fact that the construction industry is back, that means jobs are being created, that means revenues are being generated. Our total permit revenue this year is up about 9%. We have $1.3 billion in work that's being done right now. So that means when they get their certificate of occupancy, when that building gets back on the tax rolls, that means there will be additional revenue next year to do more and more of the types of things that we'd like to do, but that we've had to defer for probably 7 years as long as this recession has been going on. Next slide. Some of the things that we have been doing this year that we've are really proud of. We created the Neighborhood University. Many of you have already been through it. I saw the Mobleys go through the last session. Carol, have you been through it yet? Okay. Did you not pass the entrance test? But here's why we set this up. Some of the same neighborhood leaders that are still active were active when I came to the city in 1987. I think it's my job to create that next generation of leaders. You know, these amazing men and women that have been doing this for 30 years and doing it well have done a great job, but it's time we created a whole new generation of people to take their place. Whether it's Betty's place or Margaret Veazey's place or Carol's place, we need young people and neighborhood activists to come behind them to be able to carry that torch. So we created a whole, curriculum for neighborhood leaders to teach them who these people are, what they do, what their departments do, how code enforcement works, how you interact with the city. Essie, you've been through it, haven't you? It's a great program. It is a great education. If you're lucky, Chief Castor will even tase you if you want. I'm kidding. So I encourage those of you that have not been through it, sign up. We're on our third class. We go through them about every 12 weeks. We want more people. We want the existing neighborhood leaders to reach out and identify for us young talent that we can bring through. So when we all get tired and retire, there will be lots of young people to take our place. And I think if we do this right, when I leave office, we will have trained hundreds of new neighborhood leaders to take our places. You can see some of the amazing things that Jake Slater and Sal Ruggiero and the code enforcement folks have been able to do in the last year. I mean, look at some of these numbers. 554 tons of debris that would have been sitting in the alleys, that would have been pushed out on people's curbs. That's sofas, that's mattresses, that's garbage when tenants move out. That is 554 tons that we have picked up that is not in your neighborhood anymore. That makes a huge difference in the quality of life for the people that live here. We moved employees around to dedicate them to the task of code enforcement and maintenance of alleys and maintenance of our East Tampa neighborhoods. And it is absolutely working. They did, in 2014, 62,000, next one, 62,000 code inspections. Now, all of you know what happens when you get landlords in there that don't take care of their property. I mean, it's like a cancer. It spreads from neighborhood to neighborhood, street to street. It's important that we stay on top of these folks that are not doing the right thing by you and by their neighbors. 62,000 code inspections. We cleaned up 496 illegal dumping sites. I know that's an issue in East Tampa. Essie tells me about it all the time. It's a problem. But that's 496 dumping sites that weren't going to get cleaned up. Go ahead, Carla. Next slide. No, back up for a second. Nope, you're going the wrong way. Okay. Yeah, Jake, just 2 weeks ago, what was it, ML King to Lake at 34th? How much did you guys pull out of there? 10 tons on one day. One day. That's debris that's not in your neighborhoods anymore. Okay, Carl. How many of you have heard of the Nehemiah Project? I stole it from Ernest's mom, and she stole it from the Bible. She's in more trouble than I am. But you know what the story of Nehemiah is and how they rebuilt the walls of Jericho? Sulphur Springs. How many of you live in Sulphur Springs? Anybody? Okay, there we go. Sulphur Springs was a neighborhood that was teetering on the verge of collapse. It was the toughest challenge that we had as a community. And we knew that if we didn't get in there and do an intervention, if you will, that we potentially would lose that neighborhood. What had happened years ago is that folks had been allowed to put duplexes on single-family lots in the 70s. That was the beginning of a very tough period of time for Sulphur Springs, because you would get folks in there, landlords that wouldn't take care of the properties, and tenants that would tear the place up. So we knew that we had to go in there, and we had to go in there hard. We brought together all of the social service agencies for the first time in the 25 years that I've been doing this. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone is focused on the mission. They're not worried about who gets the credit. You've got everybody from the YMCA to Layla's house, the Children's Board, focused on Sulphur Springs, because we had to stem the bleeding. We identified 92 structures that were eligible for demolition. Those are structures that had been abandoned, that had been burned out, that were now being used by the crack dealers and the prostitutes and the gangbangers, and creating an environment that wasn't conducive to anybody getting out of Sulphur Springs without being a statistic. 92 houses, we've demolished 47 so far. Tore them down, cleared the lot, got rid of the cancer. We dedicated additional code enforcement personnel. We took out of Sulphur Springs alone 193 tons of debris. Thanks to the effort of TPD and Chief Castor and the way we shifted our deployment, crime is down in those census tracts 20%, which is higher than it's down, or lower than it's down, the rest of the city. Because TPD really identified the problems, put the manpower to it, and the end result is Sulphur Springs is a better place. So we don't want 47 vacant lots sitting there. So what do? We need to reestablish that neighborhood by putting roots back in. So we are now in the business of building houses. Single family houses, not duplexes, owner occupied, for sale, that the city goes in and subsidizes. We use private market financing to get it done, and you're starting to see these houses help to reestablish a neighborhood. It's going to be a long journey, folks. We're not going to fix this. It took 40 years to get in this condition. We're not going to fix it in a year, but you have our commitment that we're going to keep focusing on making that safe. You can see where all the houses are. And so those are either houses that have been demolished or houses that are about to be built. Go to the next slide, Carl. All right, here in East Tampa, since 2011, we've seen a 15% reduction in violent crimes. We're a long way from fixing that problem. As Diane knows firsthand, and we saw the march that many of you participated in last week, violent crime is a problem. It is a serious problem. We've got young men shooting each other for nothing, for absolutely nothing. And we've got to find a way to deal with that. We can't have that next generation of young men, particularly young African-American men, dying in the streets because of someone disrespected them or someone did something to them. Pulling a gun and shooting somebody is never the answer, ever. 32% reduction in property crimes. And then you can see some of the other projects that we've been engaged in here in East Tampa. The crime-free housing program, where we get apartment complexes to sign up for additional training. The Rich House has opened up in Robles Park. We got mentoring programs. We got bike registrations. Chief Castor and the men and women of Tampa Police Department are on the job and making a big difference. Carla, next slide. Go ahead. All right, these are some of the major infrastructure projects that we have going on out here. When I say infrastructure, these are the things that you can't cut a ribbon on very easily. I mean, it's hard to cut a ribbon on a sewer pipe. It's hard to cut a ribbon on an expansion of a water pipe. But these are important things. See all of those indicators on the map over here? Those are all projects that are either ongoing or anticipated to be ongoing in this budget year in East Tampa. That is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. Now, some of it you may not see because some of it may be underground. We have old pipes in this city. Some of these pipes are 100 years old. They're not built necessarily to accommodate the additional growth that we have had. So we've got to get in there in the ground to help fix some of the stormwater issues, make sure the water is flowing, make sure the wastewater is flowing. But that is a lot of work. That is tens of millions of dollars that are being directed to East Tampa to fix some of the long-standing problems that have either never been addressed or because of the recession had to be deferred because the city couldn't afford to do it. We were putting Band-Aids on pipes during this recession because we just didn't have the revenues. Just to give you an example, 2007, we generated over $150 million in property tax, right? That's a lot of money. 2011, that was down to 114 million. $114 million. That's how much revenue we lost as a result of this recession. because of declining property values, because of lack of building starts. So you can see that our ability to do these kinds of things was somewhat limited. We lost a lot of money. Our employees, 2007, we had 5,200 employees. We're over 700 employees down than we were in 2007. And these people are getting up every day and doing the same amount of work with less money and less personnel, and they still get the job done. But there's been a transformation of city government as a result of what happened during this recession. It was not pretty, and it still continues to be problematic. All right, so we've got a couple big ones coming up. We got Perry Harvey Park. We finally got that resolved. I'm not going to tell you what I think about that or some of the people that caused us to delay. But you can't tell me that a skate bowl that was built by a Parks employee deserves the same treatment of the history of the African American community on Central Boulevard. We're done with all that now. We got that behind us. We're going to start building Perry Harvey Park in the very near future that will connect what was Central Park Village and Encore to downtown Tampa and pay tribute to the history of Central Avenue and all of the people, whether it was Arthenia Joyner's daddy or Moses White or Perry Harvey's dad or Mr. Hargret. I mean, there will be a whole list of folks that will be honored in that park. That's going to be an amazing transformation of that. Go ahead, next slide. Some of the Jazzy seniors were down this weekend at Waterworks Park. You should have seen them all in their bathing suits, and they were kind of skimpy bathing suits there. I don't know. Carol, does your son know you go out like that? But that Waterworks Park, if you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. That really, and it was great to see the Jazzy seniors out there. That park really is going to transform that portion of the Tampa Heights area and open up the river like we've always said that we needed to do. It's got a great splash pad in there. It's got a dog park. It's got an amphitheater for concerts and all kinds of exciting things. Go ahead, next slide. Some of this is the Riverwalk. Thanks to President Obama, we will open that Riverwalk in January of this year, next year. That Riverwalk, as many of you know, has taken 6 mayors and 40 years to complete. I was so hoping that Mayor Bill Poe would be alive when we finished it because he's the one that started it. And I don't know if you remember how he started it. They started out by selling wooden planks that people could buy and put their names on. And that was the beginning of the Riverwalk. President Obama and the Obama administration gave us the last $14 million to be able to finish it. So we're connecting it right underneath the Kennedy Bridge there, so you will be able to get from Curtis Sixon Park all the way to the point right there, giving us well over 2 miles of uninterrupted Riverwalk. You will be able to walk from Channelside all the way around to Waterworks Park on the river. It will be a great place to bring friends and family and visitors and open up the water, which is our best asset in our downtown. Go ahead, next slide. The West River redevelopment, this is not really an East Tampa issue, but this is something that is important. As many of you know, we're embarking on what I hope will be a transformation of the West River. Part of that includes, if we're successful, and again, it will require a grant from the Obama administration, to do like we did with College Hill Homes and Ponce and what was Central Park Village and what was Riverview Terrace, and tear down dilapidated, violent, drug-infected, gang-infested public housing in North Boulevard homes and replace it with something that we're all proud of. You know, when I go through Belmont Heights, and I'm sure Chief Castor feels the same way, and we remember what that looked like in the late 80s and early 90s, is the same way I feel when I go through North Boulevard homes right now. When I have to be out there at 12 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon because a 4-year-old has just been shot, there is nothing good in that environment that's going to emerge, and those young people deserve a better opportunity. So there's 150 acres You're getting to Julie B. Lane, running almost through Columbus Drive, over to Rome, that is controlled largely by government agencies. Tampa Housing Authority, the city has its water and wastewater yard there that we're going to move the trucks off of, and then the school system has 3 schools. Let me tell you right now, in spite of what some out in the community will say, the schools are staying exactly where they are. Blake's not going anywhere, Stewart's not going anywhere, Justin's not going anywhere, Dunbar's not going anywhere. We're going to build a neighborhood around those schools, and they become neighborhood-serving schools, and nothing is going to happen to the schools. Now, we may shift some of the fields, but the schools are staying. So we're going to take that 150 acres, including Julian B. Lane Park, that we're hopefully going to redesign so it becomes more usable, it becomes more user-friendly, it becomes safer, it opens up the river. If you go down North Boulevard right now, you can't even see the river if you look through Julian B. Lane Park. It's got those big old mounds in the middle of it. I don't know I think maybe Greco's enemies are buried out there. I don't know what that is. Diane's going, she just whispered, she goes, man, he's crazy. I'm teasing about that too. But we're going to open that park up because we want it for the seniors to be able to walk. We want the crew teams to be able to use that park. We want to do splash pads in there like we did in Waterworks. We want to put athletic fields in there. That is a dysfunctional park now that needs to be opened up so the community can use it. Now, there's some folks out there talking a bunch of trash. They're wrong. They're just wrong. We've engaged the community for the last 6 to 8 months dealing with Ruth McNair and the neighborhoods around the park to get their input and find out what the seniors want and incorporate it. This is 25 acres. This is one of the biggest parks that we have in the city system. It deserves better than what it looks like right now. So we're going to take that whole 150 acres eventually and recreate an entire environment. The folks who live in North Boulevard homes will be eligible to move back. But it's going to be in a safe environment. It's going to be mixed-use housing. It's going to be commercial. It's going to be retail. It's going to be residential. We're going to treat Main Street with the dignity it deserves. We're going to treat Howard and Armenia and respect the history of the cigar workers that helped build it and create an environment that people want to live, not an environment that people want to get out of. And that little 4-year-old kid deserves better than being shot on a Sunday afternoon in broad daylight. Period. End of discussion. So we're going to get it done. It's a big project, but we're going to get it done. Next slide, Carla. Don't get me going here, Pastor. All right, you can skip this one. This is part of the same thing. Perry Harvey Park we talked about, Julian B. Lane. This is what Julian B. Lane looks like right now from the air. Those big mounds are in here somewhere, that amphitheater where the prostitutes used to hang out right here. I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. It deserves better. Basketball courts will stay, tennis courts will stay. Hopefully a new crew facility here with an upstairs room for the seniors. It's very similar to a room like this that the seniors can have activities in to take advantage of the park. Look how it would open up this waterfront here for activities where people could actually walk in there, tear down the nasty boathouse. The Boys and Girls Club will stay. And then it connects all the way around to the west bank of the Hillsborough River. Do you know that 150 acres? Think about this, 150 acres only produces per year $150,000 a year in property tax. That's it. That's it. There's some houses on Bayshore. Derek Jeter probably pays more in property tax than 150 acres that's either on the water or a block off the water. Just imagine what we could do with that to make that a neighborhood that we're all proud of. Okay, Carl. Cascading pool. All right. Let me tell you something about these pools, particularly the historic ones. They're a pain in the neck. They're a pain in the neck. They are a maintenance nightmare. And one of the reasons why it took us so long to get to this point is because we had to make an economic decision as to whether or not we could fix this pool, because they tried it. Remember 10 years ago they tried it and walked away from it? I don't know if it was a contractor problem. I don't know if it's just the age of the pool, but that pool is above ground. So just imagine that structure that's 80 years old having to hold all that water and not leak. It's a pain in the neck. But just like we did with Roy Jenkins' pool that we just opened 2 days ago, which is the other historic pool in the city of Tampa, we're going to fix this pool. And we're going to fix it right. Right, David? We're going to fix it right. See, now we're putting them on the spot now. That David Vaughn, V-A-U-G-H-E. We put $300,000 in to do the construction drawings this year, and then in next year's budget, we'll fund it to the tune of about $1.2 million to get it up and running. And you need to help us with this part of the problem. A lot of our pools don't get used very much. So if you're in my shoes and you're thinking about the investment of capital into a facility that isn't getting used very much, it becomes very much a bottom line decision. I could take that money and deploy it somewhere else. You've got to get these young kids to these pools to teach them how to swim, because particularly in the African American community, the statistics on drowning are far higher than they are with other majority communities. So you got to get these young people and teach them how to swim. It is a lifelong skill that will save their life. We live in Florida. We're around water all the time. We're around people's houses that have pools. We go to the beach. These kids have got to learn how to swim. So get the young people that are on the streets right now, get them into the pool. Our Parks and Recreation folks are going to be running it. We've really amped up our swimming programs. And let's teach these young people how to swim. All right, Carl. All right, these are some of the other projects that we've invested in New Tampa. Jackson Heights at the Yet Center. I was just out there for the back to school event that you guys did. Yeah, I just saw you 2 weeks ago. Osborn Pond. Have you all seen the construction on Osborn Pond? You get excited to get out there and start exercising? That will open up. Many of you were with me. I know the Jazzy seniors were with me. Essie, were you there when we kicked it off? A year ago, we put about $500,000 into that. It will create a whole exercise trail around what was an underutilized, basically, it wasn't abandoned because it serves as a retention pond, but it was all fenced off, no one could use it. So we're constructing a trail, an exercise trail around that pond that the folks in East Tampa will be able to use to exercise on. And it's going to open up very soon, very soon. Ragan Park, we've done a lot of plantings with wildflowers, Fair Oaks. We had an issue with Fair Oaks. The maintenance of Fair Oaks was not up to the standards that you deserve, nor I expect. Once we were made aware of it, we fixed it. And Greg Baer has gone through and done an inventory of all of our facilities, literally down to the doorknobs, practically. So we know what has been deferred out there, what has been neglected. And this is citywide, this is not just East Tampa. So we have an idea now, which we had never had before, exactly where the problems are and what needs to be fixed. Fair Oaks never should have been allowed to get into the condition that it was. It's back up where it needs to be. A lot of new summer youth camps, senior programs are growing. I would like to activate this facility much more than it has been. I mean, I would like to do it not just on a per rental basis, but have our employees here all day long where we can actually do programs and senior activities and, maybe computers and, potentially get a learning lab in here where some of the young people will have positive things to do instead of hanging out on the streets. Next. All right, more nitty gritty stuff going on in East Tampa. Again, it's not sexy, but these are improvements that were needed, that are getting done. Stormwater is a big issue. We have put a lot more money this year into the two things that I hear about more than anything as mayor. Stormwater, flooding, and road resurfacing, potholes. You guys, same thing? Let me show you something here. Fully 30% of the city's road resurfacing budget gets spent in East Tampa. We have repaved, this is East Tampa, we have repaved all of these streets. How many of you have seen your neighborhood streets been repaved? Come on, get your hands up. There you go. Unless you all live in it. See, from 2007 to 2014, these are all the streets that we've done, all the neighborhoods that we've done. It's a lot of paving. And we're adding additional $4 million something to the repaving budget plan. $4 million to the repaving budget this year to get even more done. What happened is, obviously, the potholes have been deferred, but then last year we had so much rain that the rain gets underneath the road bed and the road base and causes depressions, not just potholes, because oftentimes they will erode water, pipes under there, stormwater pipes, wastewater pipes, which create all kinds of other issues that compound the problem. So we're going to get after the road resurfacing issue. Go ahead, Carl. There it is. 1/3 of the city's total road resurfacing budget gets spent in East Tampa. In the last 10 years, 40% of the paving work, 8 miles completed in 13, 8.4 in 14, and we have 8.2 miles in East Tampa that are scheduled to be repaved in 15. Some of you were there when I announced the Operation Bright Lights and Safe Nights. We've been having some issues in some of our neighborhoods where the street lights were not illuminating to the point where people felt safe, or the foliage had grown, the tree canopies had grown, blocked out a lot of the street lights. In some of our high traffic areas, we were having people getting hit. So we struck a deal with TICO where we are going to install, what is the total amount, Allie? 9,000 new streetlights throughout the city. In fiscal year 14, we installed 470 new streetlights in East Tampa. For fiscal year 15, we've got 304 planned for your communities. When you light it up, the bad guys don't want to be there. They don't want to be there. It's safer for pedestrians who are walking, and it's safer for people who live in the neighborhoods, because the folks who want to hang out and cause mischief and mayhem don't want to be there when the streets are lit up. Next one, Carl. These are some of the steps that we've taken in East Tampa to improve the safety of pedestrians. Obviously, we had some tragic incidents that occurred on Hillsborough Avenue. Hillsborough is not a city road, but we stepped up to the plate, and Gene is working with DOT to try and implement some things that will make it safer. You know about the four-way stop at Chelsea and 34th? That was a bad corner. We all know that. That was a really bad corner. That's got a four-way stop right now, and I think will make that intersection much, much safer. This fiscal year and next fiscal year, we're going to be doing a lot of work on 34th Street, trying to improve it not only for the business community and the merchants that are along there, but to make it more attractive. That's a heavily traveled road. It really needs some love, and we're going to give it some love. You can see some of the other things that we have done. We'll be working on 22nd Street as well. We've got 125 sidewalk maintenance projects going on in East Tampa. So again, there's a lot of work, which means a lot of people are getting employed, and a lot of small and women-owned and minority businesses are able to pay their employees. Again, more East Tampa infrastructure, big drainage issues up on 43rd Street. That's a $28 million investment that will help alleviate some of the flooding issues that we've got. Go ahead, next slide, Paul. Here's some of what we've been dealing with for the last couple of years. 713 positions less. This year's budget, we've had to put in $4 million for new police vehicles, because we try and keep the police vehicles because they get used so frequently on a regular replacement cycle. That's about half of what the department really needs. The $4 million will get us to next year, where hopefully the revenues will be better. We got $1 billion in there for additional trucks for Chief Ford, and then we're working on deferred stormwater repaving of the roadways. Next. We started out this year with a deficit. Started out a lot higher than that, but when it really got down to brass tacks, we were about a $6 million deficit that this team here had to figure out how we're going to submit a balanced budget, where we're going to make cuts, where we can find efficiencies, where we can find creative financing methods to be able to get that deficit down. Go ahead. All right, this is what's called fund balance. This is like your rainy day account. This is what the city keeps in reserves for something very bad that could happen. First and foremost, a hurricane. We have got to have enough coverage of our existing debt, plus we have to have a lot in reserves in the event there is a catastrophic event, particularly a hurricane. We would go through this money in no time if we ever had a major hit of a hurricane. Now, some of it we would get reimbursed by FEMA, but we have to have those kinds of reserves to not only maintain our high credit rating, but equally as important to make sure that we have the ability to deal with some serious problems if they were to emerge. Wall Street generally likes 20% in reserves, which is the red line here. You can see that consistently we have kept it at 25%, certainly since I've been there. And the only time we had to tap it was during the throes of the recession, when we had to tap the reserves to balance the budget in 2011, 2012. But you can see that we are well within the range that the Wall Street rating agencies require, and gives us a good cushion of an additional 5%. We have probably $95 million, give or take, sitting in reserves. Now here's what you don't want. You don't want politicians depleting your reserves, because that puts you in a really precarious position. When Mayor Arroyo came in, she had $20 million in reserves. You can't even clean up Bayshore Boulevard with $20 million in reserves. Fortunately, when I came in, she left me with a much healthier reserves that enable us to get through this recession. Be careful, folks who want to tap the reserve fund for their pet projects. You don't want that to happen. You don't build an addition on your house if you have a hole in your roof. You got to take care of the roof first. All right, what's the next one? Now this is, a lot of this won't make any sense to either you or me. Now, Sonia's taught me, I know this stuff now. But this is sort of how the money's split up. Different types of funds that we have. General fund versus, enterprise funds. Go ahead, next slide, Bob. This is the millage rate. We haven't raised your taxes since 1988. How many other cities can say that? We have not increased the millage rate in this city since 1988. Now, there were some things, to save our homes, caused some tinkering with it. But in terms of what the city has done, the millage rate has remained consistent since '88, and we plan on keeping it consistent. So that's the millage rate right there, 5.73. So next one. All right, this is, see that red up there? That's blood. That is where the recession hit us. General fund revenues, property tax revenues. That's not the revenues of water and sewer, some of our enterprise funds. 2007, $166.2 million. 2013, this is what we had to use to do the work that we're talking about today, a lot of it. You can see how precipitous that decline was. And you can also see how it started to climb back up. So construction, that's what you heard me talk about, construction permitting and all the development activity. I spent a lot of time trying to create an environment in downtown Tampa where people want to come and build big buildings. Because single-family housing is capped. You can only increase single-family housing 3% per year because of Save Our Homes. That is not true with commercial development. So all this commercial development that you're seeing downtown, the 5 new residential towers that are going to break ground in downtown Tampa the next year, are all driving that number up. Because that's all property tax that I can use to spend anywhere, not anywhere. Not anywhere. Some of it's captured by the CRAs. But a lot of what funds my ability to do parks and recreation, to do code enforcement. So I need those developers to be throwing up steel and moving dirt, because it allows me to do some of the good stuff out here that I can do. If that doesn't grow, there's no money. it generates revenues. Next slide. This is another, now this is one of my favorite ones. This is where I'd love to get Chief Castor and Chief Ford. Here we go. See this big piece of the pie here? This is why you don't argue with a woman with a gun. That whole piece of the pie, $227 million, 62% of general revenues goes to pay for the police department and the fire department. And I wouldn't change one iota of that. If we don't have a safe city, we don't have a city. So I don't mind paying that kind of money to keep the manpower up, to keep the troops trained, to make sure that we don't miss a beat, because that 60% decline in crime that this city has seen over the last decade, attributed to the men and women standing in the back of the room and Chief Castor, has made us a much safer city. That's over 100,000 less victims. That's us. That's us. I'm not changing that at all. We need them to be staffed up. We need them to be manned up. We need them out here on the street. We need them to keep putting bad guys in jail and keeping us safe. And responding to a fire or two every now and then. Or as some of the officers in the back of the room say, the firefighters who everybody loves have a job where they have 2 barbecues and a sleepover and then they go home. Credit to the stout brother, the stout man back there. All right, next slide. You can see here the impact the recession had. 713 positions less than what we had in 2007 and 8. Okay, next one. All right. You hear about cities all over the country that have pension issues. Cities going bankrupt because their pensions are insolvent. In your city, largely because of the way the pension is structured, where the employees, particularly fire and police, certainly pay their fair share. They pay, when the market's doing well, they pay less. When the market is doing poorly, they pay more. Reagan, what are you up, 12% now of your paycheck that goes into pension?
12.7.
Yeah, 12.7 of every police officer and firefighter's check goes into their pension fund. So they're coming out of their pocket to make sure that these numbers are good. Our pension funds, both the fire and police and general employees, particularly fire and police, out of 7,000 public pensions, are rated in the top 1%. There is no looming pension crisis in Tampa, Florida. Partially because we've had mayors that have made the contributions that they needed to make. They didn't step out and take what's called pension holidays, where they didn't put the city's contribution in and sort of bet on the come and hope the stock market would grow and cover their contributions. You're going back 29 years, Greg, how old's that pension?
1969.
1969, the mayors had done what they were supposed to do and employees had done as well. We are funded at 93% fire and police, and I think 97% general employees. Your pension funds, our employees' pensions are safe. They're safe. It's a solid pension fund, and it's the envy of the nation. Okay, next one. Next one, Carl. All right, healthcare costs. We all know it's a big problem. We had to take some steps because, see, the blue line is the rate of increase in healthcare costs for the city. It's what we all go through in our individual lives, our companies. If we had not done anything, that blue line would be at $62 million a year that the city would be paying out for healthcare costs. Because of some of the preventive actions that we took, we set up our own clinics, so now our employees have their own clinics to go to. We've got a lot of wellness programs going on, smoking cessation, better eating, but mainly the clinics. The result is we're paying $53 million a year for healthcare costs, the difference of about $10 million. So we've slowed the rate of increase. The increase is still there. I mean, you can still see it climbing, but we have slowed the rate of increase. So that's $10 million that we're able to put back out here in the community. Okay. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right. See this number? This is how much we raise in total in property tax. See this number? the cost of the police and fire department. Big number. Big number. So it wouldn't change a thing. We're going to continue to hire. We're going to continue to make sure that department, because we've got a lot of retirements coming down the pike in the next year, as some of our senior officers and a lot of our institutional memory are retiring because they've taken advantage of the drop. So we've got to make sure that we get these young troops through the pipeline and get them trained to make sure we don't miss anything out here on the streets. But that's a very real number. And that's what it costs to run those two departments. It is what it is. All right, next slide. Okay, these are some numbers for the capital improvements, some of the summaries for the next 5 years that we anticipate investing in these various departments. Go ahead. All right. 2003, the city put $2.6 million in neighborhood improvements. Let me show you what we're doing this year. $18.7 million. When I got here in 2011, that's what it was at 10. This is what it is now. These are things that directly affect your life, quality of life. Those are the types of neighborhood things that you deal with every day that we're trying to get a handle on. Go ahead, Bob. All right, these are some of the things that money can be spent on: sidewalks, street resurfacing, neighborhood projects, parks. That's how you get to the $18 million. Go ahead. These are the enterprise funds. These are the guys that keep the water flowing and sewer flowing. Big numbers, $338 million. You have to be separating those for discussion's sake from the general revenue fund. They have, because their funding is dependent upon their rates. It's all sort of self-sufficient, we hope. Yeah. Go ahead, next, separate parking. Thanks to the hard work of Sonia and Mike Perry and the budget staff, the Wall Street rating agencies raised us from a AA rating to AAA, which is one of the highest in the country. And what that means is the higher your rating, it's like your credit score. The higher your rating, the better your credit score, which means when you go to borrow money, and cities borrow big sums of money, you can get it at a lower rate. So the fact that we are AAA rated in our water and sewer bonds is a really, really good thing and a great testimony to the folks that run those departments. We're going to try and get AAA for the rest of our debt next year. Unemployment's way down. I think when I came, and I'm not like Rick Scott, I'm not taking credit for all this stuff. 2012, unemployment was 8.6. April of this year, it's down to 5.9. There's optimism out there. There's hope. People are feeling better. Go ahead. All right. This is okay. 2 public hearings coming up at City Council, September 4th, September 17th. I encourage you to attend if you like, but just remember, I'm going to end where I started. You pluck a thread, and it affects everything else in this budget. So if money is moved from one place to the other, it's getting taken from somewhere else. I'm not taking it out of reserve. So if a council member moves something for his or her pet project, it's going to affect somebody else's project. So you just need to be careful about what goes on in those budget hearings. But this is a good budget. This is Tampa's turned the corner, I think. And I am confident that over the next 3, 4, 5 years, that this city is not only going to lead Florida out of the recession, but we will be the dominant economic engine south of Atlanta in the United States, in the southeast. It's exciting for us. East Tampa is doing better. We need to make sure with that rising tide that everyone floats.